Today, I will show you how to use Cockpit, a new free and open source ground control station developed by Blue Robotics. A ground control station, or GCS, is a software application that is used to monitor and control various robotic vehicles, such as aerial drones, or in today's case, we have an underwater robot. This is a Blue ROV2 that can dive down to about 300 meters, as well as stream and record video on this front-facing camera. It'll be my exemplar system for today. If you work in the mobile robotics industry, you probably know about the two other main free open source ground control stations, Q Ground Control and Mission Planner. Naturally, I was curious why Blue Robotics decided to make their own, so I reached out to them and asked. Turns out, they want a highly customizable user interface for their pilots. Cockpit is designed to flexibly display mission information through simply clicking and dragging, adding whatever widgets that you want on screen to customize your own experience. Also, Q Ground Control and Mission Planner were designed with aerial vehicles in mind and have since extended outwards. Blue Robotics, being a manufacturer of maritime systems, wants improved functionality for seafaring vessels. Lastly, I haven't seen any major updates to the user interfaces of Mission Planner or Q Ground Control over the last few years. That might be my own ignorance, but you certainly can't customize things the way you can in Cockpit. I'm not saying that one ground control station is better than another, but it is good to see new energy entering the GCS space right now, and Cockpit's definitely adding some great features. Their first release prioritized the ROVs, which run on ArduSub. So anything running the ArduPilot family of autopilots should technically work. And hopefully, Cockpit will be extended to support the PX4 family of autopilots in the future. The interface today, as you'll see in just a moment, is primarily geared towards the piloting aspect. It appears that mission planning is likely on the horizon since Blue Robotics put out a new autonomous surface vessel, the Blue Boat, earlier this year. And while I haven't tried it myself, some users have found success running Cockpit on an actual quadcopter. With all this being said, ultimately it is your decision what GCS to use based on your personal preference as well as compatibility with your vehicle. That's enough of an overview. Let's now jump into Cockpit. There are two ways to use Cockpit, and they both require a vehicle that runs BlueOS. The first way is by installing Cockpit as a BlueOS extension. I did this by connecting to my local Wi-Fi network and making sure that I had internet access. Go to Extensions and then search for Cockpit. Select Get and the install will begin. And once that completes, you'll have a Cockpit button appear in the left navigation. The other way to use Cockpit is as a standalone application. Here's the GitHub repository for Cockpit, and if you go to Releases, then scroll down and you'll see the assets that you can download. You have an app image for Linux, DMG for Mac, and an exe for Windows. This is very similar to downloading Q Ground Control to your native system. There are some minor differences between using this standalone version versus using the BlueOS extension, and I'll try to highlight those differences as we go. Now let's open Cockpit by clicking on it. You might have a slightly different screen to start than me. You may be prompted to add a user right away. Go ahead and do that and create that user. And then it'll also prompt you to go through a tutorial. I recommend you do that as well. And then I'll show you some of the basics and most important components. The most essential part of Cockpit, in my opinion, is the ability to create those users. If you go to this side tab, Settings, and then General, right up here, I'm going to be using this generic user Greg. Shout out to all the Gregs out there. But here is where you'll switch users and then add new ones. These users are just like a user on a computer. When you log in, you have your settings, your profiles, whatever you're doing on your computer. And then when you log out, someone else can come along, like Phil, go into that same computer, but everything be different. In Cockpit, you've got the basic settings that you can set up, you've got your joystick controls to customize, and then you have something called views. And the views are really what you're seeing right now on the background. This is the standard video view. There's also the HUD view, which is more tactical, like a jet fighter cockpit. And then there's also the map view, which I think will end up pulling in an actual map. I'm not connected to the internet right now, and I have no offline maps downloaded, but this would show your vehicle, if it had GPS connection, where you are in the world. all the changes you make then to these views, to the joystick, to whatever you're doing in here, get saved to that user. And you can then go back always, jump into settings, general, and pick the user that you want. Technically, you are ready to go and do a mission right now. However, I recommend you change some settings first, starting with the joystick. Over here, let's select joystick, connect your controller, and then press any button to proceed. I'm using a PS5 controller, though many controllers are supported. What I'd recommend if you're having issues is go to Gamepad Tester. It's an online free website, and use your controller there first to make sure everything's working out. From here, you should be able to move your controllers around, click buttons, and you'll see the button get pressed live in red. And then you can also tell what function is mapped to that button. To change that function, you just come in here and you click, and then you decide which one of these input maps you want to set. You can unmap the input if you want, you can make it the shift input. You can also search, I believe, at the top for what you want. So if you're looking for a disarm, for example, search that, and then it'll map it to a given button. Let me see how the layout is right now. I've got my arm and my disarm. My servo is set up. This is useful for the Newton gripper that I have on the device, and then my mount, tilt, up and down. So when you set this up for your user, it saves with your user. If someone else comes along, switches users, then they'll have their own joystick ready to go. And then once you X out of this, your joystick is ready to use. So I can now, let me look down with my camera, look at my gripper here, and then I can open my gripper and close my gripper accordingly. Let me come back up here and center that camera. Great, so now you're ready to do a mission if this is all you wanted to do. I'm going to show you the rest of the settings I recommend you know, and then also show you how to change your user interface here. Let's go back to general really quick. This should all be filled out normally, and with the defaults, if you're using the BlueOS extension the way I am in a browser. If you're using the standalone, you may need to come in here with the vehicle network connection and change this to blueos.local or whatever host name and IP that your individual vehicle is using. The rest of these things I have not needed to touch. Over in interface, this is where you can change the glass color of the background. So you can set this to whatever you want. If you want it to be more red or something, I'll just do this for the demo right now. That can be red, and then you can set the opaqueness to be really solid and obnoxious. And then you have the blur as well to see how much you want it to kind of blur the background and show what's going on, or just keep it more as a menu item. You can change where this whole left menu appears by clicking the top bar. That'll actually give you this top left selection now. You can see those 3 bars up there, or just the center tab as we had it before on the left side. And then of course displaying between meters and feet, best seen down here at the depth indicator. If you want to reset to defaults, you click the reset to defaults button. If that doesn't work for any reason, just refresh your browser or close and open the app. Sometimes things are a little bit clunky. Next, we can go over to video. This should all be defaulted properly, but it's a great way to check your connections, your stream names, what actually you're going to be recording. I haven't touched this at all except for the video library in the bottom right. This is where, when you record something, you go here to access it. We're going to cover a lot more about the videos after I do a dive live for you guys, and we'll then look at how to post-process that and see how it works. The other place to access this video library is in this little recording widget in the very, very bottom right. Same thing, click this button and it'll pull up that exact same video library. Over in telemetry, this is super important when you want to include data on screen in post-process. This whole interface does not get recorded when you do a recording. Only the items that you have here, the pitch, roll, heading, mode, depth, and so on, get recorded as a subtitle file, which you can then bring back out and display using VLC Media Editor. We're not going to get super into that right now. We'll get into it later. You might also notice it's a little hard to see all the items on screen right now. Remember that in the Interface tab, you can adjust settings like the color, opacity, and blur of the menu glass to fix this. And then the alerts, dev, and mission, I haven't gotten into those yet. but I'm sure with future updates, the mission will be very relevant. The next thing I want to do is revisit these views. Now there's the 3 defaults. You can add additional ones. You can also map changing those views as one of your joystick functions. I can't really remember which one it is really quick. Let's look if is there a view here. If we go to view, maybe it's in cockpit action. Oh yes, it's in cockpit action. You can do go to next view and go to previous view. And that'll actually then shift between those things easily as opposed to having to click them in the bottom left to move between the views. These are actually pretty useful. So you have cockpit actions and you have the typical Mavlink actions. All right, let's get out of this for now because I don't want to actually map that to my controller. Okay, and now if we drop back into our navigation bar, we can go to Edit Interface. And this will edit the current video view interface that we have set up. In the top here, we can move between the different interfaces and you can edit each of these individually. Remember, any changes you make affect your user and your user only. Here's the HUD view, and if you want to add a new view, you just hit the plus button right here. It'll come out with some sort of default name, very whimsical in Blue Robotics fashion. I'm going to cancel this and then delete that view for now. Let's take stock of what we have on the screen. We have a ton of different little elements where information is displayed, and these are called widgets. There's 2 main types of widgets. There's regular widgets and there's mini widgets. Let's start looking at the regular widgets. They live in this main viewing area here. There's a virtual horizon, it's this very top right guy, a compass, and then there's the video player which actually displays our stream. You can click and drag these widgets around the screen, and you can also resize them using the buttons that appear when you hover over them. I'm going to keep these in the top right. It's nice to have them a little bit bigger here. The video player itself is also a widget. Let me come over and add another video player in. I only have 1 stream available. I don't have a secondary camera, so it's going to default to grabbing the same video. So now we kind of have a videoception going on. However, if you went into these settings here, you could select a secondary stream. You can also change the style. I think fill is what the back one already has for the full screen, and then contain, I think, gives it the resolution that the default video is coming in at, and it'll hold that resolution. One gotcha to look out for when you're using multiple streams will be to also make sure that you include multiple recordings, okay? Each of these recording widgets is assigned to record one of your streams. So you'll need to have 2 of those for 2 streams and so on. Let me get rid of this video player right now, and I'll show you that mini widget. Let's drop into mini widgets here. I think it's called a recording widget. Here, the mini video recorder. You can click and drag them into your screen. You just simply select the stream name that you want to record, and then you're set up to go. Here's a quick demo of what it looks like to have 2 cameras recording at once. One is downward facing and the other is forward facing. You can see in the bottom right bar, they have 2 separate recording widgets, 1 for each stream. We can click and drag mini widgets to put them anywhere on the screen. In the top and bottom, these actually are subdivided into 3 areas. There's top left, top center, and then top right. And then the same thing for the bottom. There's bottom left, bottom center, and I think there should be a bottom right as well. These then can drag and be destroyed by dropping them into the trash can. And you might notice that we actually can't put it though on the main viewing area. To do that, go to regular widgets and grab a mini widgets bar. Click and drag him into the main screen. He starts out empty. Let's resize him a little bit. Let's put in our depth right here. Let's drag him in. Let's take our water temp in there. And now you can put mini widgets on your main viewing area. I think if we make this skinnier, they'll go vertical. Perfect. All right, this is looking pretty good. One of the most important mini widgets is the very generic indicator. You can see it comes with some of these presets, and actually that's how the water temp uses this, the lights, the camera, pilot gain that are already actually a part of the interface. If you go to custom though, we can bring in any variable that we want into here. And so I'm gonna bring in the CPU temperature. There we go, click that, give it a name, CPU temp. I'm gonna get rid of the unit because I'm gonna grab an icon and search for temperature. That's degrees C. And then X out of this, I now have my CPU temp that I can drop, shove him into my side mini widgets bar over here. And so now I've got custom widgets in here. I've repositioned things to the way I like it. Totally up to you to design this how you want. And this all saves to your user. The last widget I do want to show you that seems pretty powerful is one of the regular widgets. Let me go over to the iframe. I don't have a great example here, but this would be really useful if you have a web URL, something that's hosted on your computer that you can access. So I think some of the SonarView applications, once you start putting more and more sensors on here, you can display this then in your interface. Now I don't have that, so it defaults here to a URL, which is just the regular BlueOS URL. And I'm going to show you how you would change this for future use cases. If we go to BlueOS and then enable pirate mode, in the top left, go to available services. This will show all the things that are running now in your initial or your current BlueOS environment. And if we scroll down, I've got tether diagnostics. Not a great example, but it should highlight what we're talking about. You can grab this link, come back into Cockpit, go into the iframe settings, change this, select set, and now we have tether diagnostics showing live. So if I was really interested in my megabits a second, I could keep this up running and it'll just be in my layout. It's not a great, this isn't a good example, but you can imagine if you had sonar footage, a front-facing sonar that you wanted to see what was coming up, this would be a great iframe to just plant right in, and then you have it on your display. I'm going to get rid of this for now. Thank you for bearing with me for that example. Now that my user interface is set up, you select exit, and this is what lives on your screen now. Friendly reminder that when you start recording, you'll want to use this bottom right, select the stream to record it, and that'll create the video file. It technically creates two files, because one of the file will be that .ass that contains the subtitles. If we go back to telemetry, these subtitles will be stored the way that you have them selected in the telemetry box here. On the left, you can select the font size of this information to be displayed. You can change the color, bold it, italics, and so forth. And then this is where you add new variables. So maybe you want to add CPU temp. I'll drop that in over here. And now we'll get that in post-process as well. We have submission variables we can put in here. You can do a custom message. I can just do a quick shout out to my mother and drop this in the top right. Now when we go and do a mission, we'll end up with a .mkv when we record. So this recording will trigger creating two files. We'll have a .mkv, which is the video file, and then we'll end up with a .ass, which is the subtitles file. Let's stop this now after 10 seconds and take a look. Here at the bottom, this is the file that I want. When you select download, it's going to prompt you to download two files. The first one you'll notice has the extension of the .mkv. I'm going to throw this onto my desktop for ease right now. Save that. Another pop-up is going to be for your .ass file. These are your subtitles. I'm going to go onto my desktop and save that there. One little pesky thing here, if you're using the extension, you need to come into your downloads again and select keep for both of these. Keep and keep. I think if you have the standalone, you don't have to do this extra security thing that the pop-up shows here. So now if I go into my actual file here, I've got the MKV and the .ass. Let me open up the MKV, and it should just be a raw video, right? This is just the raw stream that came off the ROV. However, if I come in here, right-click, and open with VLC Media Player, now when I open this, give it a sec, you can see I have the information that I requested on screen, including, and most importantly, the Hi Mom in the top right. In the event that you don't want to keep using VLC Media Player, I'll put a link in the description to, it's called Handbrake. Handbrake can take these subtitles and automatically burn them in and give you a .mp4, which is more useful for other applications. Let's exit out of this, and we should be good to do a real dive now.
Let's get this out. Woo-wee.
All right, we're out here right now. Not much to see underwater. It is the murky Pacific Northwest. What'd you expect? I do want to show you really quick to start the stream right now if you want to record this. So the stream's already going, but if you want to record this, you select the record button and that'll immediately start recording the stream. We can change stuff real time if you wanted to. I'm in depth hold mode right now, so I'm not too worried about crashing. You can come over here and continue, change your interface. Let's say I want to move these lights back down to the bottom left because they're not so important anymore. I go ahead and exit, and then I can just keep flying as I was doing before. So the live on the fly changes are pretty nice. And then once I'm done watching this video, I'm gonna move up and down a little bit just so we see some changes in the depth for us. All right, once we're done with that, you just click the stop button right here. It'll process really quick, and then if you come in and look at your videos, here's the most recent one. You can download this MKV and the .ass, and I'll show you what that looks like when we burn it in at home. Let's burn in those subtitles into a final video file. Go to the Handbrake website and download the program for your operating system. From within Handbrake, select the .mkv video file. Then head over to Subtitles and import the subtitle.ass file, and be sure to click Burn In. Then select Start Encode, and the video will save as the file name you have at the bottom of the screen. Here is our final product, a .mp4 video file with all the telemetry that we set up earlier in the telemetry menu. Thank you for tuning in, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on Cockpit. Have a great week.